So this was originally a PickAPile reading, but because it's for Quiet Child, all of the piles, a lot of cards came out, and I anticipate that it's going to be longer than the standard PickAPile would be, so I'm just going to do them as standalones. That way I can release them more quickly. I guess let's just jump right into this. I'm going to start off with the messages from your child. This is a spirit-guided, self-created deck. Let's see what we have. Please get me some art supplies, or help me find something around the house I can use to make art with. Already we know that this is a kid who has got some creativity that is bursting to come out. They like trying new things. They're very curious. And they don't, do they, oh, I see. Oh, okay. Okay, so they're not really sure what kind of art supplies. So they're going to need a little bit of creative direction. You know, not direction to say you should do this or that, but you could try this. You'd be good at that, sort of a thing. Oh, I'm really stressed out and overwhelmed. My outside doesn't match my inside. And I have strong negative feelings about a person I see daily. Okay. So, your child is going through what adults typically call an awkward phase, where they're changing and they're growing, and the way they feel, as the card says, does not match the way they look, and it doesn't match the way that their peers relate to them. They have a vivid interior life, a vivid world within them, and that's their primary comfort. But the fact that it's interior is not enough at this point. This child needs to see something outside of themselves, and preferably something that they are responsible for creating, something that has actually come from that vivid interior world. To see it expressed on the outside through art, it would empower them, and then also it would give them a totem, something to look at, to feel like they have a place in the world. Because if they're able to create things that they're proud of, and these things are around them, it will remind them who they really are, as opposed to who people are taking them to be, which the child does not agree with and makes the kid feel really bad about themselves. Not like self-hatred, but just really uncomfortable. The way that the peers react to the child is part of the stress and overwhelm. It's a big part of it. It's most of it, in fact, I'm being told. And so there's one thing, that's the fact that the child has this urge to channel their, I guess, frustration with how they're seen and how they are currently physically expressed in the world through art is really a beautiful thing, because it says that this discomfort hasn't taken away the child's curiosity yet. Because a lot of times when there is any kind of stress or trauma, it's a natural human reaction to avoid things, and not only the things that hurt, but pretty much anything new or novel in general, because it's unknown territory. And even things that look great, there might be, there might be monsters along that path. And by monsters, I mean things that are going to cause the child to experience those stress feelings, to experience that sort of sharp, I don't know, that sharp interior feeling that you get when something something presents itself on a path that doesn't align with you, and that makes you feel other in some way, let's say. Somebody that the child sees every day, for some reason the child is having negative feelings, and I suspect that it has to do with their appearance, that somebody is singling them out and making them feel like they don't belong. Right? Again, the fact that their reaction to it is to want to create is a positive sign. But the fact that there are these negative feelings about somebody they see every day indicates that the kid probably needs some gentle communication to sort of, without being prying and without being a spy, to kind of ferret out what that situation is, so that the child can not only express their feelings through artwork, but they can express their feelings directly to you and get support from you. Parental support is not always the end-all be-all solution to a situation where a peer is making them feel other, but it goes a long way as far as making them feel like they're not alone in the situation. And it'll also help you to kind of direct them to those activities and those people who are going to boost up the things that the child feels about themselves that are positive. Because this child does not hate themselves, but there is enough stress from this negative view that is being placed on them by the person they're having difficulty with, that it's becoming more and more of a thing present in their mind. And so you kind of want to see if there are ways, including and especially art and creating, where you can minimize that area in their reality to where it doesn't take up an acre of the land. Maybe it'll just take up a few feet. And, eventually it won't even really be more than a tiny patch of grass. Or, I don't know, actually it'd probably be more like dirt, because that's the one sticking point or vulnerability, is this continued focus on this external factor that they're being judged on. Because in the grand scheme of things, it is so irrelevant to who this kid is. And there's this opportunity to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. There's an opportunity to kind of put a little fence around this issue, because it's something that's temporary about their appearance. They are not always going to feel like this, but whatever this is, and I'm not seeing it, and that's likely part of that is because I'm not going to view a child as having anything wrong with them physically. So it will be up to you and your child to sort of discover, or for them to let you know what this vulnerability is, if they feel comfortable with doing so. But if they don't, just know that there's something physical about your child that another child has for some reason singled out and gives them shit about. I can't explain that whole dynamic for the child that's doing this, because I'm not really connecting with that energy. But to make a long story short, it shouldn't be blown out of proportion, because, and you know, like the child that's bringing this to your child's attention is trying to sort of make it. It's not even something that is there. I mean, my sense, and I'm getting a confirmation on that, is that it's not even something that anybody besides the kid that is picking on this kid would notice or think of. It's something really stupid, and it's a temporary thing, but it could turn into a complex if attention is not refocused from that over to healthy channels of expression. Once this kid starts creating art and expressing themselves, then that is going to open up a huge area of self-definition. And it's interesting that this is with the rose quartz, because the rose quartz, it not only is a crystal of unconditional love, but it's also a crystal of promoting self-love and self-worth. Sorry. Say that 3 times fast. Facilitating the child to create and to bring out that vivid world that they have inside of them is not only going to be really healthy as far as just, you know, self-expression wise, but it's going to be healthy as far as building momentum towards an identity or self-perception that will be strong enough that a random kid pointing out something inconsequential is not going to mess with it. Their self-identity is going to be stronger and stronger, and they will begin to identify themselves as an artist or as a musician or as a creator or whatever medium this child finds compatibility with. And I'm getting the feeling with the parent that this resonates for, your child is actually going to have a few different mediums that are really going to help them blossom. So basically, getting into creating and being able to have that amazing right brain time where time just like goes by so quickly, and yet at the same time kind of stops. I mean, it will foster this energetic aura around the child of the expression of their inner world where they feel comfortable. It's going to bring it on the outside, not only... Sorry about that. Well, maybe that's a confirmation. That's what other readers say, so I will take it as that. Yeah. It'll help the kid bring that vivid interior world into the exterior. Kind of like an invisible bubble, you know, and identifying themselves as a creator, as somebody who brings things into this world that weren't here before. That's going to be very, very empowering for them. Let's see what Michael has to say. A favorable outcome. Hey. That's wonderful. So, if you would like to address Archangel Michael, you can say, thank you for the beautiful outcome to the situation, which is perfect and fair for everyone involved. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for helping me trust and have faith. So, but He says it's not necessary that you say that. He's just giving you the heads up that this is not a huge deal, but this is something that if it's kept in, you know, that's the thing. It's the lack of expression. That is the like the covered up hole that a kid could fall into. But it's not a big deal because it's easily addressed by just nurturing that creativity and that spark that already exists in abundance in your child. There we go. I'm going to take that as another confirmation, and I'm going to mute the phone. Excuse me. Let's go on to the next card. We've got 2 Ascended Master cards, it looks like. Purification with White Tara. And come out of the closet with Amaterasu. So, again, it's coming out of the closet in this instance is referring to this great creativity that's inside this child. And they feel veiled right now. And that's where a lot of the discomfort is coming from and the stress. Because when we're not able to be our authentic selves, there was actually a study on mindfulness amongst employees that was done that was interesting because, and it kind of relates to this. Basically what it was is they were saying workers who are particularly mindful can sometimes get into, and not often, but can get into a situation where they're going along with the emotions of others around them. And so they're kind of playing a role. And that takes so much out of a human being that eventually what happens is they don't have as much self-control and direction towards that which is healthy. It kind of erodes their impulse control because there's been so much energy put into faking good, I guess you could say, you know, or dimming to fit in, that everything else that's supporting them kind of, it doesn't have anything to prop up against. You know, it's like if I don't know, if there's like load-bearing beams or something, but the wall's fake, then the use of the beam kind of, I don't know, it's not there anymore. Because if the wall's made of spit and Kleenex, then and it just washes away, and you just got the beam there, then what's the beam for? Because if it's load bearing, it's supposed to hold up a wall or something. So, well, the supports that they have in place are not as meaningful because they're not expressing themselves authentically, if that makes sense. And that's what the purification sort of refers to also, is purifying the child's self-perception, not by any sort of, you know, okay, I'm going to say this and it's going to purify this child's self-perception. But the process of making art will bring them into that authenticity, and it's just going to be like a natural organic process where they get less and less diluted. And I don't mean diluted like I'm deluded, I have delusions. I mean diluted like diluting something with water, say. It'll be less of a diluted self-perception. And so the good stuff in there will be able to fill up their glass instead of them just having like a quarter of a glass of, you know, your child concentrate and 3/4 of a glass of some dirty water that, you know, this kid that kind of picks on them is putting in there. They'll increase to half a glass of your kid concentrate, and then 3/4 of a glass of your kid concentrate. And then finally, there's not going to be any room left in that glass for this other kid to pour anything in. They can try, but it's just going to spill back on them. So that's sort of, if that makes sense, I hope so. Yay. I love Kuan Yin. I work with her, and she is caring and compassion. And in the Sacred Mother's deck, she is forgiveness. Because there shouldn't be grudges held against this other child. Actually allowing people to have flaws and hoping the best for them. And accepting that none of us are perfect. And sometimes things are just phases that people go through. Especially with children, that's pretty much being a child, is you're going through phase after phase after phase because you're developing. Okay, here we go. My teachers or teacher is or are impatient, and it makes me feel dumb. So there's some issues with expression. Someone's mistaking my autism for bad kidism, and it's messing with my self-value. I need help with frustration and tolerance. Please help me to learn how to hear and trust my intuition. Please teach me to handle more intense emotions in a way that's non-harmful. I like when we do everyday things together, like cooking. Boy, this kid has a lot to say. Awesome. Please take me somewhere fun, like a movie or an event you know I'd enjoy. Kids are not nice to me at school, so I hate going. There we go with that. Yeah, and I need to be soothed more. So, teachers don't get your child. And they don't get that your child's differences are part of their beauty. And they're also being impatient when the child is trying to express themselves. And they're just sort of looking at the child with preconceived notions that honestly have a lot more to do with their own wounding that they haven't healed than anything your child's doing. And I know that it's a very stressful sort of time for everybody. But teachers have teachers have an obligation to be patient with children and to remember that they are part of the collective hands that are molding the clay that is these children, and that things that they say or project onto kids can impact them far, far beyond just that period or that semester. Or, if you have a really awful teacher that sees you as being nothing more than a punk kid or a spacey kid, or a kid that, I always hated to hear this, dawdles. What a word that is, dawdles. Ugh. The dawdling kid is actually the kid with the vivid imagination. And if there is a way, this is terrible of me to say, but I'm going to say it. If there's a way for that teacher to benefit from your child dawdling, like a record company or an art agent or someone else like that would benefit from that child's vivid imagination being out in the world, then would they really be saying that your child was dawdling or anything like that? No, I don't think so. But because schools are really standardized and everybody is sort of expected to be the same in as much as their areas of study, the only chance you really get to be freeform is your electives. And the selection of electives isn't broad enough to really, sort of pull out the best of each child, or pull out what their innate talents are, what they were brought into this world to contribute. They're just kind of like art, and then everybody does the same art project and they don't really get time with it. It's just sort of like, okay, sit down, here's your art, hurry, art, we've got like 50 minutes or however. And then a bell rings. And that is a yucky condition to create under. I think Robert Henri is the one who said, he wrote a book called The Art Spirit, which is tremendous, that if you want to paint for 1 hour, you have to block out 4 hours in your schedule to do so. Because it takes time to build up the momentum. It takes time to get into that brain space and that energy where you're not on a schedule, there's no jumping through hoops, there's no check boxes. That's the whole thing about creativity, is you need a wide open field to run around in. Sometimes a fence or parameters is helpful, but that's more as applies to the work, not the time that you're allowed to do it in. It puts a sort of pressure there that is really antithetical to creating anything. With intuition, it would be helpful for this child to learn how to tune in more to that inner voice and that inner guidance, because they're going to be able to tell when something is correct or if it's incorrect and they shouldn't listen to it or worry about it. If they're not able to trust their intuition, or if they're not able to even hear it, then they don't have a litmus that will help them determine whether or not somebody's just full of hot air, or if they have a valid point. And if everybody, no matter what direction they're coming from or what their agenda is, has a valid point, that's very confusing. That's a lot for an adult to sort out, all these different viewpoints and opinions, let alone a child. So being able to know, yes, that resonates, no, that doesn't resonate, is like giving the kid a little metaphorical garbage can and like a little score sheet or something, and they can kind of say, oh, okay, well, this is obviously garbage, so I can just toss it in the circular file. This is something that I need to think about. Like this. Garbage. Not a bad kid. Really, really good kid. But boy, oh boy, a stern teacher's face crushes this child. And that's why they need more soothing. And it would help to learn how to self-soothe. A way to bring themselves back to a state of equilibrium where they feel like the kid that they are, the creative, imaginative, beautiful, amazing kid that they are. Instead of how some of these teachers, apparently, and one of the students at least, are making them feel, which is not too hot at all. Or actually, this is plural, so it's probably the kid picking on them and their friend group. Because kids do that. Do that, sorry. But kids do that. They always enlist others to join in. And they like spending time with you. This child likes spending time with you, likes doing those things that foster that feeling of home and support and comfort. And cooking may actually be one of the areas that your child would like to create in. You may have a little chef or a baker or a cake decorator on your hands. So finding out from them what sorts of things they would like to cook might open up some of that creativity as well. You know, they might end up making like amazing cakes, like some of those cakes on TV that are just crazy. But they do need help with frustration, intolerance, and intense emotions, because they're taking it out on themselves, really. On the inside for sure. But is that okay? I'm hesitating saying it, and Michael's pushing me to say this. This kid might smack their head against the wall if they get frustrated. That's probably hard to hear. It's hard to say. But quite frankly, I've been there. That was something that I did. I have Asperger's. So, and I was not diagnosed until last year. And I'm an old thing. So I'm familiar with a lot of the ways that, you know, you try and cope with some of the conflicts with the exterior world that presents when you're not aware of the healthy and appropriate ways to cope. And so getting frustrated with yourself and smacking your forehead into the wall, or hitting yourself in the head with your fist. It's an acting out of how the teachers cause the child to feel when they're impatient and when they don't view the child correctly. Because this is a really, really good kid. And there is nothing more frustrating when you're in a position where you don't feel like your authentic self is out there, and to be a good person, a good kid, for people to look at you and see the exact opposite for no legitimate reason except their own failure to perceive you correctly. And in a school situation, this child is feeling outnumbered. In a peer situation, this child is feeling outnumbered. There's not an ally or an advocate that is right there at the hip to be like, hey, that's baloney. And to immediately sort of like triage the bullshit. You know? There's no voice of reason immediately available. And so it feels like these particular cards of frustration and tolerance and learning to handle the intense emotions are kind of looking for a way to be their own ally and to have certain notions about themselves so sturdy, so concrete, that they provide a buffer. And they keep the child more in a state of equilibrium than getting just completely derailed into this emotional path that they never belonged on in the first place. So I suspect there's going to be some cards that will speak more to this as we move along. But we'll see what comes out. We've got the Divine Animals Oracle here. Dragon, supernatural. You are the ancient wise sage. You can shape-shift at will. Mastery is your destiny. Rise with dignity. Okay, well, here's one of them. Dragon is like a magical creature. And kids with autism are magical creatures, too. Because in our society, we look at autism as being a disability. And it's not. It's a different type of brain. Can it cause issues in the quote-unquote real world? Oh yeah, big time. But there are areas that your child can access that your average kid, not that there's anything wrong with them, but they can't. There is a reason why children are born with this, because it changes just as a blind child learns to use their other senses, or is able to use their other senses to not only make up for being blind, but to actually make more of it than a sighted person would think would be possible. I mean, they can feel music differently because there's no visual accompaniment with it. That's not like really a great example for what I'm trying to communicate here. It's like I have the kernel of it and I just can't seem to parse it out. And that, actually that's a great example though, because with my own Asperger's and my own, unique brain, or whatever the heck I got in here, I can take a lot of layers at once and of information, and it will all hit me as this dense, all-encompassing feeling that communicates volumes. But being able to get that out and translate it to other people so they see basically the rich tapestry that I see, every tiny little area of that feeling expands exponentially in being explained. So it's almost like it would take a crew to put it together into a cohesive form. There's things that your child can feel and can perceive and sense and see that remain in an intrinsic language, because frankly not a lot of people in the outside world, and certainly not a lot of people in this child's outside world, speak that language. So if you know Spanish and you don't ever speak Spanish to anyone, it seems like it would be more difficult after 10 years or 15 years to access as many words, to be as clear, to say exactly what you want to say, because you're out of practice. I mean, if it's your native language, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that you could break down this what I'm saying here and say that it's not 100%, but I think you get the gist of what I mean. the more we're able to express ourselves in the way that we feel inside, the easier it becomes. And the art is going to help this child express and learn how to sort of translate themselves for other people. If that makes sense. But the main point here, though, and it's appropriate that I'm pointing at this with the unicorn card, is that this is a very special child and a very creative child. And their brain is very unusual, and it's like that for a reason. It is not by mistake, it's by design. Because the things that this child will create are going to be things that nobody else would be able to come up with. And they're valuable things. And that's part of the frustration, is feeling the intensity and the beauty of the interior world and trying to, even just to say that the interior world is expressed through the child being themselves. It's not even able to be expressed that way. And so there's like a sense of rejecting this interior world, that there's something wrong with it, that there's something wrong with this kid's innate, gosh, what's the word? Help. Not like impulse, but like their knee-jerk reaction, like, but not reaction, but like what naturally comes to the child, what they naturally see. The rest of the world doesn't. But because there isn't like a really accepting environment, they hold back. Because if you express yourself freely and then somebody thinks that you're a bad kid because they don't understand how to interpret the way you're expressing it, that maybe you're a little bit frustrated, so you're coming across more aggressive than you really are, for instance, then you're going to be less likely to express yourself authentically. You're going to be more likely to try and figure out what is okay to say, what is okay to express. And that's just, it's too confusing, because this kid isn't meant to conform. They're meant to be the beautiful, unique child that they are, and express what is in them, not what other people see as being acceptable on some exterior level. A unicorn card is strength. This challenge will make you stronger. You will get through to the other side. And look for the gifts in the situation. So this is sort of a way to cope here. To make the child aware that adversity is, while it seems crummy when it's first at you, it actually will add to their story. And it will add to their sort of mythos as an artist, too. Like when Andy Warhol took his portfolio in to try and get a job drawing shoes, and he opened up his portfolio and roaches came out. That was terrible and embarrassing. But years later, when he was a celebrated artist, it was like this highlight moment of, he came from that and he still went towards the exalted, towards art, and towards creating, and towards expressing his uniqueness and his gift. You know, whereas I can easily imagine situations where that would happen, and it could well be like a thing that would knock somebody down. Like, you know, if they had the right other awful stuff, you know, awful perceptions, you know, misperceptions, that something like that could just make them give up. But like, maybe sharing instances from your own life where something was embarrassing or something was challenging, and how it ended up helping you grow and benefiting you, and how it made you more interesting than other people, and it made you more relatable than other people. That will help them. So they'll know that the intensity of those emotions in the moment, as much as they feel like the biggest deal in the world, as much as they are the biggest deal in the world at the moment, they will calm down. And the icky perception will turn into something that they can actually look back and say, yeah, man, that happened. You know, and it's like actually a neat part of their story. And it makes other people say, wow, you know, I don't come from great surroundings or whatever. Like with Andy, you know, I mean, I could see that happening to me, but he didn't let it stop him, kind of a thing. You know? Okay. Okay, so here's to, I don't know how to describe these cards, so I'm just going to lay them down and tell you. Oh. Excuse me one moment, please. An interruption letting me know that we will soon be interrupted again, so wonderful. Okay. Better Soil is the first card. And what this card speaks to is getting the kid in environments that are more nutritious for them. Getting their roots, getting... I guess you could even say the roots of their self-perception into, metaphorically, better soil. Like the soil of the opinions of the teachers and the kids at school is basically like that gross stuff that they put in some plants where it's like almost foam and there's nothing to it. And there's nothing that feeds the plant at all, and you've got to transplant that into like nutritious soil, and soil where there's room for roots to spread out, and they're not going to get all log jammed and tangled up in like this little tiny little planter, you know, this tiny little plastic pot, to where they're like stretching out of the holes in the bottom of the pot, the drainage holes, because there's no more room for them to go. So, and then the other one is Bird by Bird. Anne Lamott, the writer Anne Lamott, wrote a book called Bird by Bird, and it's a book on writing, and the title comes from something that happened with her brother when they were kids. He had this project where I think he had to do something like 256 birds. He was supposed to, it was like one of those long-term projects that they give you, and then you wait until the last minute, the night before. And that's what happened with him, is he waited till the night before it was due, and there was 256 birds that he had to go into detail about for whatever kind of project this was. I don't recall. And he was stressing, and Anne Lamott's dad, you know, was talking to him about it. He's like, Dad, how am I ever going to do this? And his dad said, bird by bird, son. And so Letting the kid know that they don't have to rush. The teachers are impatient and they make them feel like they have to rush. No. Let them know, take your time. I mean, obviously you don't want to take too much time, but I don't think that that's the problem here. I think the problem is that your kid needs to go at their own speed. And there's not currently a lot of that happening for them. Not a lot of allowance to let them go at their own speed. And so, if other people are not going to make the room for them to go their own speed, then they need to be taught how to make that room for themselves. Because they have every right to it. And it's okay to go step by step. It's okay to go bird by bird. You know? Okay, relaxing and being. These are cards. These are CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy based cards that help kids with different things. And this one is about shaking out like a monkey to release energy and tension in the body. An alternative to hurting themselves, because the emotion is just so intense, it's unbearable, and it's almost like they need that pain to distract from it. So in this exercise, they reach both arms up with their hands flat and count to 10, and then drop their arms and head to the floor and swing from side to side like a monkey. And it says here, you can even make monkey sounds. Obviously, this is probably not something you want to have them do at school. But in the comfort of your own home, in the comfort and privacy of your own home, absolutely. And there is probably a modified version of this, something physical, that that might be a portable thing. I don't know what that is. If I think of it, I will certainly I don't know, make an amendment to this video in the description or something, but the idea is translatable, because it's a way to release energy and tension out of the body and get that storm within to calm down. So it's a matter of any sort of little idea that can help them refocus to their external, not anybody else's external, but to their physical, to get them out of the mental and out of the emotional for just a moment. If it's not shaking it out like a monkey, it could be playing Kaiser Sose and naming things around the room, even if only to themselves, like Chuck Taylor tennis shoes, or high tops, whatever, pink fake flowers, weird cat head lamp that doesn't work. Just like, you know, things. Obviously I'm doing that in my own home here, but yeah, just anything that will sort of bring them out of that internal trap of tension and sort of roiling energy, and sort of snap them into another energetic area. So it's just something to break up the momentum of that intensity. Even if it's only for a moment, you know, they could wiggle their toes and concentrate on that. You know what I mean? Just something to where the momentum of all that emotion is halted, so the train doesn't have a chance to go off the tracks. You know, thinking and doing. Let's see what this one is. Better but believable. When you're worried or sad, thinking positive thoughts will help. But positive thoughts can only work if you believe them. So think better but believable thoughts, or B3s. For example, if you're worried about a test, you may not believe the positive thought, I'm sure I'll get an A. So it will be, pardon me, more helpful to think, I've worried about tests before and I always do well. Okay. Not all kids test well. Excuse me, I gotta take a drink. Sorry about that. I was gonna say, I'm not so crazy about this example, because if we're doing better but believable, a believable idea is that not all kids test well, right? It's the nerves and other factors, just like getting psyched out by being tested. So maybe, I always do well on tests isn't the best substitute thought. And maybe this isn't like the most helpful example. But I mean, I completely agree. We got kids playing outside. I completely agree that a better but believable thought is really more conducive to helping a child think more positively. It's conducive to helping anybody that kind of has a sense of what actually happens to them to think more positively. I can't think of a great example for your child. I can only think of one that is analogous for me, because I have the same sort of issue with if something sounds too good, then I'm sort of like, oh, like that's gonna happen. This is like one of my things that I work on is being positive in a realistic and believable way. And I wasn't familiar with this card, and I wasn't expecting it to come out, so it kind of got me a little bit in my issue here too. But yeah, I mean, like if they want to go out for a talent show, for instance, if they want to try out for a talent show, then a better or believable thought would be, instead of, I'm going to be the best person in the talent show, to substitute that for, oh, I'm not even going to make the first round of auditions or whatever, would be, I'm going to try out, and it's really cool that I'm brave enough to do this. Where it's not so outcome based. It's reality based, because it is brave to try out for a talent show as a kid or as an adult. It's very brave. So it's kind of about teaching them to accentuate the positive, but in a way that they can buy into, as opposed to a way that they're automatically going to resist because it just sounds too far-fetched. Okay, these are letting go of anger cards. They're to help teens tame frustration and other intense emotions. So the first one that came out here is my magical playlist. Develop a calm the heck down playlist in your mind. What are 2 or 3 must-have songs to include? Play them in your head when you're feeling angry. This is excellent. This is excellent. My brain does this automatically at this point in my life. I actually had an intense time the other day, and I just kept hearing a Paul Simon song in my head over and over again, one that I'm particularly fond of. It's all bouncy and happy. And yeah, so if you can train your kid to do this, or help them train themselves, let's say, that sounds less oppressive, sorry. But yeah, if you can help them train themselves to go to their magical playlist, like a couple of songs that they really love, that just, no matter what's going on when they hear the song, it's like, when I hear Boogie Nights, I'm sorry, I'm going to be like all goofy, because that's just like, a fun song. So I mean, any kind of song that they really like, will work for this. And to have 2 or 3 on hand is a great idea. And even, especially, if you help them make up a song with like just a little short couple of bars or something, a couple of verses with lyrics that kind of address the situation in a funny way, like a generic, need to make myself feel better situation. Because your kid can probably come up with some cool lines for that. And maybe you can, help them find a melody, or the two of you, or you can use a traditional melody from some other song, for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, or whatever. Yeah, and have his, like, own little custom song for your kid. Okay. See a hidden positive. Think about a positive quality in someone who irritates you. Consider how this activity helps you avoid all or nothing thinking. So, yeah, this is another accentuate the positive sort of thing. Because the more you can look at the sunny side of the street and see the good in even the roughest stuff, the better off you're going to be. And being able to find a hidden positive in somebody that is really kind of like, on your back, or, being a negative vibe merchant or whatever. It's great not only for the short-term benefit of feeling better and kind of having a little freedom from the irritation, pardon me, but the long-term benefit, because it's going to help your child not view people in terms of this or that, black or white, because that's the kind of view that really closes down curiosity, and it leads to labeling people. And the labels that we put on people are never accurate. There is always more to every picture. And especially in creating art, the more your child is able to go towards the, oh, this is interesting about this yucky thing, or this is interesting about this yucky person, or that is actually a quality about them I like, even though I don't like how they're behaving right now. If they're able to start, like, steering their mind into those areas, that's not only helping them interpersonally with other people, but it's helping them with anything they create, because they're going to be seeking out more of the nuance and more of the richness and detail. And it's just going to be, informing their originality and feeding it and promoting it. And it's just good all the way around. Like David Lynch says, look at the donut, not the hole. Yeah, actually, let me say that again. Look at the donut, or focus on the donut, not on the hole. And we're not going to think about donut holes right now, because that's actually a food. But he means the negative space in the traditional donut. Okay. So these, what are these? Are these Empathic Oracle? I think these are the Empathic Oracle cards. Authenticity. Bam. Yeah. That's so much what this reading is about, is your kid learning to be not only okay, but pretty dang satisfied with who they are, the way that they're made. Because there's nothing wrong with how they're made. There's everything right with how they're made. It's just getting them into that better soil where the way they're made can flourish. Focus. Being able to create things is going to help build that quality in them. And the fact that the environment isn't really supportive of their talents, their gifts, their uniqueness, that takes away clarity, puts a fog on everything. But if they're able to focus on things that they're creating, I feel like that they have a much, much easier time focusing on things that are positive, you know, as far as like having a focused view. Not like, there's two different ways to say focus here, and I'm tripping myself up, because the thing is that it's easier to concentrate. Okay, let's substitute concentrate for focus for a second, because that's where I'm getting screwed up. It's easier to concentrate on something that we find interesting and positive, or that makes us feel good, than it is on something that is tedious or painful or insulting or what have you. So that's one aspect of it, the benefit from focusing on art. And the other aspect of it is focusing in on the positive. This looks a bit like a phoenix. Pardon me for just one moment. Those kids outside are so happy playing their ball game. It's adorable. Alright, light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. That's something that they really need to see, because things can get pretty stormy for them because of the influences that we've discussed already. And the thing is, they're the light at the end of the tunnel. You know? It's not something outside of them that has to happen. They have that light inside of them. And so what this reading is asking of you is to help them shine that light outward. And past. There's things here that replay in their head that they may not be able to communicate, but perhaps through art they can begin to sort of express the emotions that these past issues cause them to experience. And when they're able to start expressing the emotions and lifting some of that weight off of the events that triggered them, then it's only a matter of time before the events are able to surface enough to where they can begin to deal with them. Because it's really hard to heal something if you're still going through it. And if you're still experiencing emotions from the past and holding them in and holding them in, then it's basically like it's still happening, you know? So emotional expression is going to be the beginning of being able to deal with past issues that have stuck with them in a detrimental fashion. Okay, these are the Trust Your Vibe cards by Sonia Chilquet. She's got a YouTube channel. Get a new story. Yes, this child needs to have a new story about themselves. A new story about themselves to tell themselves. And part of that story is that they are a creator and they are made exactly how they're supposed to be made. They do not have to be different to be the same as other people. You know, they don't have to change who they essentially are. They need to learn to work with who they are and to have a backstory that they can tell themselves that supports that beautiful, positive vision of who they are. Cloak yourself in light. And I feel like this ties back to them being their own light at the end of the tunnel. And that knowing that when you know that there is goodness about you, when you have a surety of that, it is a cloak, it's a shield. It's a buffer between you and the rest of the world. You know, it helps you maintain equilibrium, and having like self-assurance is just going to continue to foster more and more good things in their self-perception, in their sense of identity. You know, like it, I mean, you can even have your child visualize themselves cloaked in light and have it be a shield for them energetically. Because it's a great spiritual practice, first of all, to kind of shield your energy. And the visualization of it, taking time, you know, a minute or two to really focus in on doing that, in a way, is kind of bringing that, a bit of that inner world out, providing like a wrapper, you know, or like a seal of what you're going to be helping them develop as far as a more positive self-esteem. Okay, so the final cards that I have, they're cards for ADHD, but I actually find that they're just good advice for any child. And I mean, ADHD is kind of a sticky one because any child that has an active mind is going to be curious and they're going to be excited about things. I think it's a natural thing that kids are easily distracted by things they find to be shiny, you know? Sometimes I kind of feel like ADHD is made more of than it should be, because it's not, there are aspects of it that are not bad. You know, being able to really hyper focus in on something that you love. You know, you don't want it to have detrimental effects of, you know, well, I haven't moved from my couch for 2 weeks because I've been playing this game and now I'm melted into it or whatever. But that's a goofy example, but you know what I mean. But I mean, kids are kids, they're not little adults. You know, they're going to be curious about things because the world is newer to them. There's more things that they haven't seen. And and also too, like there's a commercial, and the woman's saying it's for a video game that's for ADHD, which I think is a great idea. But the commercial that I'm referring to starts off and she says, "My son Dylan has ADHD, which means that he focuses on things that he's passionate about." Okay, what's the problem there? You know, she continues on and she says, you know, instead of things I want him to focus about, you know, focus on like brushing his teeth or doing this. Well, Dylan, in this example, he appears to be about 8 to 10 years old. And I'm uppity, so I'm going to say this. Isn't it kind of her job to make sure that he brushes his teeth at that point? Or, you know, goes to bed on time? Isn't that part of what parenting is? Is teaching your child time management? I mean, far be it for me to say I don't yet have children, but it kind of seems like that's what she's there to do, is to help him learn how to manage to do both. How to manage to be interested in, what was her example, vegan dinosaurs? How to manage having a fascination and excitement over vegan dinosaurs, but still, at the end of the day, go to bed with brushed teeth. That's kind of the job description of parenting. I don't know. Maybe I'm nuts. Anyway, this first card is the collaboration card. And these are all just, these are for you. They're not examples for him. But give unconventional approaches a chance. Okay, right here. This is about him or her, them. I keep saying him. I feel like maybe the parent this is resonating for has a child who's a boy. But like having permission or giving themselves permission to be different. To not have to be like everybody else. Like the example that they're having Mariah talk about is she's way more productive in the mornings, and it's something about taking her pill. I don't know what that's going on about. I'd probably ADHD medication, I guess. But the basic point is that in this quote, her mother is helping her try out doing things a non-traditional way that happens to work better for the way that the child is made. We all have different times of being more productive or less productive. And some of us fall into the traditionally accepted ways or modes or times for doing things. But some of us don't. Some of us are more creative late at night. Some of us do better in the morning. They are having so much fun out there, y'all. I hope you can hear me. But they are just so cute. And they've been doing this for like a few weeks, and not once has anybody had an argument out there or hit another kid or any of that. These are just really adorable little guys. Okay, anyway. It's basically about making it okay to do things differently than everybody else they know does things. Which is hard when you have a teacher that is impatient with you. Because right there, if your child's just trying to communicate to a teacher and the teacher's like tapping their foot, looking at their watch, being pinch-lipped at them or whatever, then all of a sudden that's already like a condemnation for how your child is. It's an unspoken condemnation. And that's exactly the kind of thing that's going to cut off their creativity. It's going to cut off their access to being able to make a place for themselves in this world as they are, as they're made, not, yeah, okay. The challenge. Sometimes kids' ideas seem counterintuitive to adults who reject these ideas as far-fetched and discourage youngsters' participation. Tool. Be aware of your tendency to reject your child's ideas. Ask for their input on how to solve a problem. Try some of their outside-the-box suggestions and discuss how these worked out. This is great because it will help. In doing that, you're going to help your child be able to figure out and also use their intuition to find the right way to solve problems. Because they're going to come with something that's like totally off the grid. And then if you give them an area to test that out, they can begin to learn how to discern, okay, this works, this doesn't. When I do this, it's good. When I do that, it's not. And they can learn how to start to organize that in their brain. Because a lot of times, especially with kids that are quiet, there's so much inside that stuff gets really jumbled up and confusing that would not necessarily be confusing. But especially if they're holding back who they really are because they think that they're going to be rejected or made fun of or, punished, whether it's literal punishment or somebody giving you a mean look like a teacher, that messes up their whole ability to be able to figure out their world. And that's what you want them to do, because you want them to be okay when you're not here anymore. When you're not there to tell them this is what you should be doing or this is the appropriate answer. You want to teach them, well, how is it that you know that? How is it that you find the right answer? And the only way you can do that is through trial and error, because you eventually learn how to discern what works and what doesn't, and sort the wheat from the chaff, I guess. Compassion. Want a friend? Learn to be a friend. Everyone seems to hate me because I'm different, says Diego, age 14. Nobody's ever told me that they want to hang out with me. I've always told them, maybe I'm just not good enough to have friends. See, that's being different is really socially difficult. It says that kids want meaningful peer connections, but may struggle with making and sustaining friends, often missing or misreading important social cues. That's a huge part of being on the spectrum. Not knowing how you come across to others, and not knowing socially what is expected of you. So the tool that they have here is offer empathy for their social challenges, for their loneliness, and for the rejection they experience, while carefully managing your emotional reactions to their struggles. Talk about friendships, whether it's acquaintances, casual friends, or best pals, and which people they know or would like to know who fit into the categories. What can they do to connect appropriately with these kids? And you can brainstorm 1 or 2 easy conversation starters. Yeah. The controlling your emotional reactions to their struggles is important because, and especially with kids on the spectrum, because they are so sensitive to other people's feelings. But anytime a child comes to you and expresses something to you that they're dealing with, and you have an emotional reaction to it, you're teaching the child that, okay, there's some things I'm going to say that are going to upset my parent. And they're going to be less inclined to say those things. They're going to be less inclined to express anything they anticipate, whether rightly or wrongly, is going to upset you or make you mad at another student or a teacher or cause something to happen, right? And by cause something to happen, I mean, like, in my experience, I learned not to, later in childhood, not to mention so much people who were mean to me, whether they be teachers or students, because my father would have an extreme reaction, and it would end up making things worse for me because I had no control over what he did or said. And so if he was verbally aggressive, say, to a teacher who was unkind to me, that could lead to repercussions that I had to suffer that had nothing to do with me. So that's just like a side note. Because, and I mean, he was coming from a good place because he loved me and was trying to be protective. But because he had stuff on his plate, both at that moment and from his own childhood, that was rough, that he was dealing with, his reactions were not as measured as would have been productive. So I just wanted to make a note of that, because it's a tendency, especially when things are tense in the world out, in general. We want to protect those we love, and sometimes we can be kind of fierce about that. So I just wanted to add that in as a side note. Okay. Oh, I was supposed to read the front. Consistency. Okay. I was not consistent. They're reading the fronts of the cards. Improve persistent with a planned approach. Keeping my focus on what we're doing in class or what I have for homework for more than 15 minutes is always really hard, says Shanice, age 12. I think about what's for lunch, or the movie I just saw, or the snow outside, and I don't do my work. So here we're touching on focus again. The challenge is it's tough to maintain focus for extended periods of time, so kids can't accomplish what they want or need. Work goes unfinished, and frustration runs high. Yeah. And especially, you know, if they can't finish things they want or need to, that also erodes self-esteem, because then they don't feel capable, they don't feel empowered, they feel... It's easier for the kid to believe the negative stuff that, you know, the negative input they're getting from outside sources, because they're holding themselves to a standard as well. The tool here is strategize an order for doing homework that goes from easy to hard or hard to easy, depending on their preference for getting started. And homework could be actually anything. But ask them how long they can focus before they need a break. Set up daily work periods broken down into chunks of this length of time with specific short breaks. This reminds me of Pomodoro, where you set a timer for 20 minutes. This has dust on it, but such as this one. Hey, what's up? So you set a timer for 20 minutes, thereabout. And then when the time goes off, you get a 5-minute break. And then you set it for another 20 minutes. And then you get another 5-minute break or a 10-minute break. You know, whatever works well for your child. But it's helpful to, as far as things that you don't want to do, as much as for things that you do want to do, because you only have to do it for 20 minutes, whatever it is. Otherwise, things feel, for kids and for animals, it can feel like things go on forever. They're going to go on forever. Like the dog always thinks you're going to pet them forever, you know, or like when you know, summer feels like it will last forever for a child, or, you know, and I'm not trying to, you know, to make a bad comparison. It's just that, you know, dogs don't wear watches, and kids don't really pay attention to time. They're not linear like that. They're learning how to be more linear. But that's not their natural inclination. I mean, they're sort of like all over the place, because their brains are still developing. So, you know, there's areas that are of their brains that are firing off, you know, randomly. And there's not like a lot of organization. It's just, that's something that we develop. It's not something that we're born with. Okay, the final card here is self-control. And it's about what to do when worrying takes over. Carter, age 11, says, I'm used to a lot of stress. I worry about being wrong or letting my parents down. I don't have a relaxing place. Yeah, so this is speaking to the feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and not feeling like having like sort of permission to be who a person is, permission to just be, or even a safe place to do that in. And by safe, I mean where you're not going to get negative feedback from somebody. You know, where you can just, where it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be goofy. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to have a little bit of a temper tantrum, as long as, you know, you're trying to learn how to manage things. But I mean, if you do have a temper tantrum, or you need to cry, or, you know, you're frustrated or whatever, that you're not going to have the extra baggage on top of you of some wise guy making fun of you for crying, for instance, or you know, oh, well, you always have temper tantrums, and they saw him have one, right? Out of a whole, like, let's say a whole year, and judging them on that one instance, you know, basically a place where they won't be judged, you know, and where they can feel safe and the worry doesn't take over because the environment is soothing. Practice breathing techniques, says the tool part, with your child before bed to be used later in a crisis. Try alternate nostril breathing. Close one nostril with a finger, breathe out of the other, then switch. I've heard that that works, but I actually can't do that because I have sinus issues. Or bubble breathing. Take a big breath in through the nose and blow it out slowly through the mouth as if blowing a huge bubble. Now that absolutely. And you can say, you know, in with the good air, out with the bad air. Do at least 3 rounds. Teach your child to notice when they feel anxious and use these calming tools immediately. So you're just giving them like a little life hack to manage those intense emotions again. Kind of goes with the frustration, intolerance, and wanting to change that. Because your child does have the desire to change these things. Your child does not like that they have these issues. And it's part of what adds to their feeling of feeling bad about themselves. Because they wish they weren't like that. But it's okay that they're like that. Because they want to learn how to manage it better. So everybody starts from a starting point. And that's part of also the being able to accept how you're made. You know? I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I mean, I have certain like go-tos. I really should think about them and make a separate video just of like the little hacks that I've taught myself to use as far as managing intense emotions. But having these little tricks, you know, having your little bag of tricks you can go to when you're freaking out, basically. I think we all need that. We all need that, especially with all the stuff there is to freak out about. And can you imagine if you get stressed or worried about the world today, how your child, especially your quiet, sensitive child, experiences that? Because on top of all of that, they've also got all the stuff that goes along with being a child, and especially a child who is different from the average kid, you know, because that's not an easy thing. It's not easy to be an adult who's different from the mainstream. And when you're a kid and you're on those unsteady colt legs, it's even harder. And especially if you don't have a way to express yourself and things are just getting bottled up. I mean, I'm getting uncomfortable just, you know, I'm connecting with that part of the energy, I guess, and it's just, wow, it's not comfortable. It's very painful. I'm getting that the noises can be painful for this child, too. Like certain sounds, there's certain, like, machinery, I don't know what, but I'm getting that there's certain machinery. I don't know if it's just like a household appliance, like, you know, maybe you have a blender that sounds like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something. I used to have one like that. It was horrible. But there's some sort of sound that really gets to this kid. So I'm not sure how to address that, but it's something that maybe observe, like when there are, like, you know, rough or intense sounds, kind of, you know, subtly observe if there's any sort of change in your child's energy or how you intuit them to feel, you know, and see if maybe there's something that can be done to address that too, because it's not a huge thing, but when there's other stuff going on, when they have things on their mind, which this child does quite a bit, and there's a lot of the past stuff that's reverberating, And then, you know, there's just at random times, I'm hearing that the mean look of a teacher or something a classmate says these things repeat. And, you know, when all that's going on inside, and then this noise that is grating for your kid, it's just all too much. So I think that this is pretty much what we have, but I just want to say, taking them fishing wouldn't be a bad idea. If you got a kid that would like to fish, and taking them fishing would be pretty cool. Maybe they don't know they like to fish yet. Maybe you don't know you like to fish yet. But being out on a dock or in shallow water, or I guess fishing depth water, I don't know. But it's a relaxing thing, and there's no impatience there. And it's a good time to come up with ideas, you know? So those nice stretches where you got to kind of be quiet and watch the line. That's really good for teaching your child how good it can feel to take your time at something. And that some things cannot be rushed. You can't cast a line into the water and just expect that a fish is just going to jump up on there when you cast the line, and then boom, draw the line back in, there you go. You know, we're having fish for dinner. It's not a process you can rush. You kind of have to work on the fish's clock, you know? So I guess that's... The kids are going home from playing ball. Sun's starting to set. And hopefully you heard all of this. They were really having fun today, so they were pretty freaking loud. But I think that's a great sign, because your kid has a bright, bright future ahead of them. But part of ensuring that bright future is teaching them how to work with how they're made, how their brain works. And yeah, okay. So hope that it helps you and your child, and have fun getting your kid into creating stuff. And much love and light.